Hey everyone, in my recent job search I have been interviewed at many companies. In this video we'll be solving a question that was asked in different interviews. So the interviewer asked me to create a Typehead component. I have created a blog on this particular Typehead component and I'll be sharing the link to this particular blog in the description. Please do refer. And what do you think the Typehead component mean? So it's nothing but a search input where user can input something and based on user input will be showing this particular content below this particular search input. So let's say this is the content and based on the user input it will check for the relevant content from this content and it will be shown as below. Let's start coding this particular typehead component. So before coding, let's divide this particular question into different parts. So here we need to create a input box first and then we have to handle the particular user input here, and based on the user input we'll have to iterate over this particular content and we'll have to get the relevant content from this and we have to show that particular relevant content over here. So let's start coding this particular example. Here let me create a text input here. Let me import this from React Native. Here let me style this properly. Style.input. So here I need to have a width of maybe border width of 1 pixel and maybe padding of 8 pixel is enough, right? Let's have a placeholder maybe interview. Okay, so now we need to handle this particular text input properly. Whatever I type, let's say we'll show it here. Okay, so we need to have an on change listener for this. On change text as it's React Native. So handle change. Let's create this particular function where we'll handle the change. Okay, so yeah, whenever I change something that will be captured here, and let's have a state variable. Set search, use state, empty string is my search in the initial phase. Here let's import this from React. Okay, now whenever I change something I need to set that particular change, right? So whenever I change something that will be captured here in this event, and okay, I'll change it here and let's say I'll just show that particular change to make sure that it is being captured properly. Okay, let me have this. Okay, yeah, so okay, it is working as expected. We are able to capture the change from this particular search input. Okay, now whatever the search we do, based on the search we need to iterate over the content and we need to pick the relevant content from this. Let me copy this particular content. Okay, based on the search input, right, we need to iterate over these elements and we need to get the relevant content from this. Let's say if I press R here, in this case while iterating I'll have to get elements which are starting with R. So here in this case I need to get Rowdy Coders, React.js and React Native. So to get that, what we can do is every time when there is a change in the search I need to get it. So what I'm going to do is I'll have a use effect, right? In this use effect, whenever there is a change with search, in that case I need to run this particular logic. So here what I'll do is if there is a change in search I'll iterate over my content array for each content. I'll iterate over my content and I'll see if whatever the search that I'm doing, if that search if that such is equals to the element, then in that case I'll be storing that element. Okay, and at the end what I'll have to do is I'll have to iterate over the stored elements below here, okay, to get the relevant content. Let's say here I'll be creating an empty array. Let's say new data something. Okay, this is empty array, and if any of the element matches my search input, in that case I'll push that particular data into this new data, and at the end I'll kind of set uh, okay, set the data into our main data. Let's say I'll create a state variable for data. Set state, right, use state, and it's empty. Now okay, here what I'll have to do is if the such is matching with this particular element, let's say such is matching with the content, right, content. Let's say here use effect is not defined, so let's import it. Use effect. Okay, so here if such, let's say if I'm typing RO, if RO is equals to such, which is RO is equals to my content, as only two letters are there, I'll have to compare this with only two letters. So I'll be picking the first two letters and I'll be checking if con dot slice of 0th to such dot length, right, only two elements I need to check, such dot length. In that case I need to push that particular element into my new data. At the end what I'll have to do is, after iterating over the content, whole of the content, I'll have to set, let me have a proper state variable. I'll have to set all of my data, right, I'll be setting the new data into this particular data, and now I'll be iterating over this particular data here. Okay, so data dot map of the, okay, so I'll have to return this particular text. Let's say whatever then data that is there, I'll be returning that. So let's say if I press R, whole of the content which matches R is being rendered here. So it is working as expected, if you see. Now let's check with other inputs, maybe small case. In this case it is not giving, it's not giving the proper output. So here why it is happening is, we are doing hard check here, where we are trying to match this particular small r with this capital R. So because of this it is not giving the proper output. So we can convert both of these items to the same case. Let me convert it into a capital case to uppercase. In the similar way I'll be converting this to uppercase. If I give H, yeah, it is working as expected, right? So now the other scenario is, if we press on this particular suggestion, it should be populated in this search input. So to handle that, what we can do is, we can have this touchable opacity, right? Let me import it. Let me import it as well. So touchable opacity, and now on press, handle press. Whenever I press on this particular element, I need to capture that element and I need to set that particular element into the search. So what I'm going to do is, so here I need to capture that particular element that I'm pressing on, right? here I'll be capturing and I'll be sending it here, and then I'll be setting that particular element into my search. So what will happen, this particular element will be set into this search, and that search will be visible in this particular text input. So here to have that value search, right? So let's say if I press on it, it will be visible here. So now if I press on it, it will be visible. So it is working as expected. Now this case, when there is nothing, in that case we are showing all of the content elements. Why? Because if nothing is there, in this case it is 0, right? Such is 0, so it is picking nothing, and it is also nothing. So this whole of this particular condition is true, because of which it is pushing every data. So it is pushing total content. That is the reason we are showing whole of the content. So to fix this, what we can do is, if our search is an empty string, in that case what we can do is, right, we can set our data to empty, and then we can return, because we don't want it to call this particular whole of the logic if the search is empty, right? So we are returning it from there. So now let's style these suggestions, right? To style these, let's have a style dot typehead. Maybe let's have this, let's style this, let me have a similar styling, just that I'll change maybe background color, right, for this particular suggestions. Let's have gray color, right? So here when I type, yeah, this is working as expected. And so we have covered all the scenarios that the interviewer mentioned, but there is possibility that the interviewer might expect you to add few more features on top of this. Something like, let's say every time I input something here, this particular logic is being called. So to improve the performance, the interviewer might expect you to add a throttling effect on top of this particular input component. Or when I input something, the interviewer might expect you to call an API to get the suggestions based on the such input. So yeah, there can be other scenarios as well. The interview might add up the different features on top of this question, and it is one of the most asked questions. So yeah, and if you have any queries, please do refer the blog to this particular question, and if you have further more queries, then please do comment out. I'll be replying to your questions, and if you like the content, please do subscribe to my channel. Thank you.